I'm unbelievably excited and honored today to be talking to Amanda Zurawski. Amanda, you are an American reproductive rights activist known for suing the state of Texas after suffering life-threatening risks during your pregnancy after being denied an abortion. At 18 weeks pregnant, because your fetus still had a heartbeat, they sent you home for 3 days to be sick enough to be able to be back in the hospital and be helped. You went into septic shock twice and you were left with a permanently closed fallopian tube due to scar tissue. This harrowing experience led you to sue the state of Texas with 19 other women and 2 doctors. And you were the first pregnant woman to sue after this abortion ban that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022. In 2023, you spoke at the United States Senate Committee on the Judiciary hearing on the impact of the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade. You addressed your senators, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, stating that your horrific experience was due to the policies they supported and nearly died on their watch. You campaigned heavily for Joe Biden and later Kamala Harris in 2024, and you and your husband, Josh, were speakers at the Democratic National Convention, where you talked about the importance of abortion rights, and you were leading with your story, which is so powerful. And I really would love to encourage everyone to listen to this speech. I love how your husband started this speech. This is not just about women. This is about families, and it's about trauma and making family life so much more difficult. There is a documentary made about you, Zurawski versus Texas, that was released in 2024, and you appeared alongside Kerry Washington and Jennifer Lawrence at the Hollywood Reporter Women in Entertainment Gala with a really powerful speech, and I would love for you to tell us that speech later. You are part of the BBC 100 Most Inspiring Women list in 2024 for all the amazing things you've done, and you live in Austin, Texas. Amanda, this is a very long list of things that you had to endure and that you then turned into something where you started being a real advocate for women everywhere and for this not to happen again. So tell us a bit more about your story in your own words.
Yeah, well, I think you got it just right. I think you covered it really well. And, it's funny as you're kind of summarizing all of the things that I've been up to in the last year and a half, 2 years. You say this is a really long list, and I agree with you, but it's also a really long list of things that I never expected to do, or to have to do, or to want to do. So it's been quite the journey. And, I feel pretty passionate that I'm just getting started and that there's much, much more work to do. And so, yeah, as we're starting this new year, I'm just thinking a lot about how we can continue this work and how my husband and my family and I can continue fighting because, as you probably know, things in the United States and across the globe have not gotten better. And so we're just figuring out how we can continue to advocate and fight back.
Amanda, so tell us a little bit more about that campaigning journey for you to stand up for what you believe, for leading with your story, which is a powerful story. And you're not the only one with this story, right? There is, I think, 1 in 3 women in the United States live under a total abortion ban. What does this campaigning and standing up for your values mean to you? And how do you plan on advocating for this basic human right?
Well, I think the fact that you referenced is exactly what motivated me and what keeps motivating me, which is that one in 3 women of reproductive age in the United States lives under a total abortion ban. And that to me is terrifying. It's absolutely unacceptable. And thinking of all of those other women and pregnant people and families who are affected is why I started speaking out in the first place. It served as hopefully a warning. It served as education for people to understand what was going on. And eventually it became a rallying cry for this movement that we're seeing in the United States. And that's what keeps me going, is just thinking about the rights that are continuing to be taken away from us and all of the folks who are suffering as a result of this control that's happening. And so moving forward, things are going to look a lot different in the United States based on our most recent election. And so we're certainly going to have to continue to fight back legally and politically. That's going to be a little bit more challenging. I think one of the most important things that we can continue to do and will always be able to do is share our stories. And I think that's some of the most powerful, impactful work that we can do. As you mentioned, I've shared mine many times. And so I'm thinking about shifting my focus to helping others speak up and stand up and tell their truth and explain what has happened to them, because it's scary to do and it's hard to do. And so if I can help others, I think that will be extraordinarily powerful.
Amanda, so what do you feel are the biggest lessons that you have learned from this year and a half or 2 years of advocating after you had this harrowing experience?
Oh my, I've learned so much, which has been incredible. I think two of the biggest lessons for me personally that I hope others can see as well is, again, I go back to the power of storytelling. I think putting a face to issues like this one is what really changes people's hearts and minds, opens them up to issues and to talking about things differently. And I've also learned about the power of using your voice. I never thought that myself, just one person, living in the middle of Texas, could have any sort of power or platform to make any sort of change. And I've learned that that's simply not true. I think any one individual person can make a huge difference. And what it's shown me is that it unites people and we're even stronger together. And that's been one of the most beautiful things that I have not only learned, but seen over and over again.
Yeah, that connection and community came out of this. Amanda,
Absolutely.
what would you tell other women who are challenged the way you were? What are your tips for them?
I don't want to sound bleak, but I think this is the reality that we live in, and more people, I fear, will continue to live in this reality in the United States in the coming months and years, which is that if you are trying to start a family, if you're pregnant, if you care about your reproductive freedom, you need to have a plan. I think you need to be educated on the laws in your own community, in your own state. I think you need to be clued in on what's happening politically and legally in this country. And I think people need to have a real concrete plan for if they find themselves in a position like mine. And again, I don't mean to sound bleak, but I think that is a reality that we're living in. Now, on the flip side, a tip that I would have for people if they're trying to use their voice for change, or if they're trying to advocate or speak out, is to surround yourself with a very strong support system. I am very fortunate that my friends, my family, my community have all been incredibly supportive, which is one of the only reasons why I've been able to continue this work.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Amanda, so do you feel that through your advocacy work, you have achieved goals you set yourself? Have you had a vision? And how has that vision changed now that you have a government that is really opposed to what you're fighting for?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because I think we can look back on the last year and specifically the last election cycle and feel really defeated, and feel like we didn't achieve our goals because we didn't put the people back into the White House that we wanted to. And, all down the ballot, we had a really rough cycle. It would be easy to get lost in that noise and in that message. I think it's really important that we don't. And I think we look at where we did win. We had abortion measures on the ballot in 10 states. And in 7 of those states, it passed. It won the majority in an 8th state in Florida, but because of the way that they changed their process in that state, it didn't pass, even though they had the majority. They didn't reach this threshold. So, I look at things like that. I look at, on a personal level, folks in my life and in my community who previously wouldn't even talk about abortion, who have now changed the way they think about it. And those small victories, they might seem small, but they're not, and they add up. And we know that this is going to be a long fight with a lot of work. And I think that's where we really need to focus, is on these smaller victories.
Yeah. Amanda, you are really someone who is and has been leading so powerfully with your own story. What kind of a leader do you want to be? How would you like to continue leading?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. I think I want to be, I haven't thought about this. I think I would want to be an inclusive leader and a welcoming leader. So it would be my dream if I can use my leadership, my voice, my experience to help empower others. I certainly have spent a lot of my life surrounded by women who uplift other women. And I think that's how we get things done. I think that's how we thrive. And I hope that I can emulate those same qualities.
Yeah, amazing. So, Amanda, what qualities do you think you have acquired through this journey, through this harrowing trauma that left you and your husband traumatized? And then you found this voice that is now trying to do the right thing. You're campaigning for something that is the right thing to do. What qualities do you feel you acquired through that really serve you to go forwards?
I think you talk about using my voice, and I've talked about using my voice, and people bring this up with me a lot, that I have found my voice or learned how to use it in such a manner. But really what I have acquired is the ability to be a better listener. Because when I'm out talking to folks, whether it's on the campaign trail or if it's with the documentary or if it's just with someone I'm engaging with on social media, I try to talk way less than they do. Because what this work has done is given people a permission structure and a freedom to talk about their own trauma and their own stories. And I just feel very strongly that if people are taking the time to listen to what I have to say, then I need to take the time to listen to their stories as well. And so I try to absorb a lot of what I hear and what people tell me and carry that with me, not just to honor them and their stories, but also so that when I'm speaking about what happened to me, I can speak the stories of others as well. I think one of the other things I've really learned is something that I think a lot of folks in this country have learned through all of this, which is to be more open-minded. Because as open-minded as I was before, I have learned so much just through the other people that I've interacted with. And it's really shown me a lot, not just about reproductive health, but about families, about relationships, about all kinds of things. It's just really opened my eyes. And I hope that we as a society can all be a little bit more open-minded and give our neighbors, our friends, our family a little more grace than maybe we used to.
Amanda, and you are the one who's giving many others the permission to fight this, to know that this is not just, and cannot be the future and it cannot be the present. And so you give them this permission to do the same. So, Amanda, how do you see your future unfold? What does 2025 hold for you? What are the plans and the goals that you have to keep on fighting and to keep on pushing the agenda forward that you know because you've experienced what it means to not have it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's what I will be spending a lot of January doing, is figuring out exactly what's next. Certainly, I want to continue educating and advocating as best I can, telling my story, whether that's to individuals, whether it's to lawmakers, whether it's to corporations. As much as I can help educate on this issue, I plan to do. I also feel a calling to get involved, even more involved politically. So figuring out what that might look like for me moving forward is definitely top of the list.
Amanda, you said something that I was hoping you were going to say. I'm hoping that you will step into these big boots that you've built for yourself and continue walking in these big boots forwards in a political landscape in a country like the United States of America that is an amazing place and just needs more people like you. I'm wondering what you are most proud of, Amanda. If you look at the last years, what is the thing that you would say you're most proud of?
Oh, that's a great question too. You've got good questions. I think I think the lawsuit,
Mm.
because that is what really kicked everything off. Everything else that I have done and that I've seen others do in my um, orbit, I think started with the lawsuit. I think that gave the 21 other women who eventually were on the suit
Mm.
the ability to start using their voices, which I think then, spread like wildfire across this country and helped people across the country speak up and share their stories. And I think it's also helped the Center for Reproductive Rights be able to gain a lot of well-deserved recognition and awareness. And I think we've built a beautiful partnership and we've been able to do a lot because of our relationship and because of that lawsuit. And so to me, that's kind of where it all starts. And I think I owe a lot to that team, to my fellow plaintiffs, to the Center for Reproductive Rights, and everyone everywhere who gave that story any attention at all.
Yeah. Amanda, the Center for Reproductive Rights has really been incredible in every single hearing that I have now seen in the last days while I was researching you. I really felt that they are one of the most courageous people I've ever seen and standing up to a system that is so hard. And and everything that comes with it, and actually men and women opposed to this fundamental human right. I found that really quite shocking. What do you feel are the biggest challenges at this point in time?
Well, first, I just want to agree with you and shout out the Center for Reproductive Rights because they are incredible, brilliant, resilient, wonderful people. And that goes for everyone I've ever met who has anything to do with the Center for Reproductive Rights. And, they dedicate their lives and their careers to fighting for this. And I'm very new to the fight, relatively speaking, in this country. And so, certainly folks who have been in this fight for much longer could and should weigh in on what the biggest challenge is going to be moving forward. I like the way that our lead attorney, Molly Duane, answers this question because she says that even though our court system and our president and vice president and administration looks a lot different, her to-do list is exactly the same as it was before. There's just an added sheet of paper on top. And so the work hasn't really changed, I don't think. I think how we execute is going to look a little bit different than what we expected. But that's what we're working really hard to figure out. And we will figure it out and we will still continue to get things done.
Yeah, I was so unbelievably impressed with Molly and with all of you, really. And I just wonder, this courage, do you feel you've always had it? Where do you think this came from? I mean, you've been sitting in front of very scary people in judiciary hearings. You spoke at the Democratic National Convention in front of an enormous amount of people. You've been interviewed by radio stations around the world. You've met luminaries from different fields. Where is this courage coming from?
Um, I joke and I like to say that I used to be a middle school teacher, and nothing can prepare you for public speaking or online trolls better than a classroom full of seventh grade girls. And to some extent that
Hmm.
is true. But also, on a more serious note, I was raised by incredibly supportive and uplifting parents, and they taught me to be self-confident, and they taught me to believe in myself. And I remember as a kid, over and over again, they would just say, if there's something that you want, set your mind to it and you can achieve it. And I truly felt that that was accurate and that I could do anything I set my mind to. And of course, I stumbled along the way. Of course, I failed and didn't get some of the things that I wanted. But every time I failed, they taught me to pick myself back up and keep going and use it as a lesson. And so I was just raised in an incredibly supportive household that taught me to be brave and taught me to be courageous, and that failure isn't really failure. It's just a stepping stone on the way to success. And so I feel very, very fortunate to have had that upbringing.
Yeah. Amanda, so we are women are siding with women, and this is thankfully a trend that is happening since a few years. And what can we women around the world do on an everyday basis to help with this basic human right, our human right to have an abortion if it's needed, to decide over our own bodies?
I think something that every single person can do in every single country, in every single household, is just continuing to have these conversations. I think some of the hardest conversations are the most impactful ones, and those are the ones that we have in our own homes with our family and with our friends and with our neighbors. And we have seen such a seismic movement as a result of the fall of Roe, and it's been incredible, but we have to stay vigilant and we have to stay engaged. I think, reproductive freedom was made such a key pillar of the election. One of my fears is that now that the election is over, people will stop paying attention, or they'll stop getting the information that they need, and things will slip through the cracks and things will get worse because people aren't paying attention. And so, my plea to folks now is stay vigilant, stay informed, and please continue talking about this issue.
Amanda, I heard you say something along the lines of pissed off mums. They are, don't mess with us, pissed off mums. And it really resonated. And I am incredibly grateful for you. I am so sorry that you had to go through what you had to go through. But in the end, I'm grateful for your story. I'm so grateful for you to lead with your story the way you do, to give other women the permission to be pissed off and bring lawmakers to the table and tell them this is not okay, to keep fighting for 25 million women in America living in conditions that you have experienced firsthand, what that can turn into and how ugly it can get in such a short amount of time. And I really hope that we will find solutions together and that you will find solutions, and we're standing with you, because I feel that this is a sure way of ensuring trauma in families, which is the last thing we need. We need moms to be resilient, to be strong, to be healthy and really well in themselves, and not a traumatized generation that is raising another traumatized generation. So, Amanda, I wonder if you have any words for the end of this interview, but otherwise, I just really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you do. And I'm so excited to keep watching you and what you're up to next.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for your support. It does mean a lot and it goes a long way. And, I've said time and again that as long as there is a fight to be had, I will suit up. And I think that's how most people feel in this country, at least the folks that I'm interacting with on a regular basis. And so it is going to take all of us. And so I really, truly appreciate your support and having me on today. It's been really, really nice. Thank you so much.